Hi, I'm Steve Mulberry, and I want to share some ideas and strategies on taking ArcGIS to the cloud. This year is unique to say the least, and we at gisync have seen an increase in organizations looking to adopt the cloud for additional services needed to support things like remote workforces or providing access to their enterprise web GIS. The challenge is when to use the cloud or which provider is best for your organization, or maybe how to make the transition and what's the best strategy for that transition. We know answering these questions can feel a little overwhelming, but we believe the cloud offers organizations incredible benefit. So why listen to gisync and why listen to me? We've been strategically aligned with Esri and the ArcGIS platform for over 29 years now, and we have around 130 passionate professionals with one core purpose, and that's to help our organizations and our customers that we work with fully leverage their GIS investment to gain better insight through that location-based technology. And we are the first Esri Platinum business partner to gain the ArcGIS Cloud Services Specialty designation from Esri, which is extremely important when migrating to the cloud or taking ArcGIS to the cloud. In fact, we've been deploying ArcGIS Enterprise both on-premise and in the cloud for over a decade now. When I started at gisync back in 2009, I deployed our first cloud solution using Amazon Web Services for a health organization or agency. And since then, you can see from this chart the trend that we've experienced with organizations wanting to adopt the cloud. And as I mentioned, this year is unique, and even with the COVID pandemic, or because of it, we're seeing even more activity in this space and more discussion. And this goes along with the trends that we're seeing in the industry. They're telling us the same thing. And this chart from RightScale shows the adoption rate from 2018 to 2019. And you can see the big three providers there, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. And what's interesting, if you go back a year and compare this to 2016 and 2017, you can see the saturation is still among the big three, but growing. And what I take away from this adoption rate is one that these providers are competing for our business, and this competition drives the cloud services cost down for us, which is a great benefit to us. And now is a perfect time to look at cloud services if you haven't already done so. So what does the cloud offer us? I think it's interesting as time goes by that the cloud really, and the expectations of cloud grows. And I think it's best to kind of categorize the benefits into sort of four areas. And the first one is capabilities. So the cloud goes way beyond the traditional capabilities that we've experienced within our existing data centers. And it replaces that legacy environment with things like services that provide load balancing or serverless computing or elastic storage and elastic services and these automatic and scalable infrastructures. All of those components are embedded inside of these cloud providers. The next is performance, being able to take these capabilities, these elastic capabilities, and optimize this infrastructure through scalability or elasticity or reliability or building redundancy into these platforms, into the services that we use. The next is cost. This is probably a big one. So basically we take and we trade off capital expenses for variable expenses, avoiding what some of us go through, a hardware refresh on a cycle every 3 years, every 5 years. And what's interesting is that the economy of scale help us gain more efficiencies in the cost. You pay for what you use when you use it and as you go, and the more you use, the less you pay. And then finally, security. There's this security model where we, as the users of the cloud, can still maintain physical security. And we share the security model with the cloud. So basically, the cloud providers are responsible for security in the cloud, and we, as the consumers, are responsible for security of the cloud. So when would your organization think about using the cloud? Maybe your organization is thinking cloud first in your planning sessions and in your design sessions and discussions. You're looking at ways to leverage the cloud. That's a good opportunity to look at what is out there and what you can benefit from. Perhaps your organization has heard that it's the cloud is cheap or secure, elastic, resilient. Everything you just heard me kind of walk through there. Maybe you have large amounts of data or processing needs, like imagery or the Internet of Things, or maybe you're trying to integrate with other business systems, cloud-based business systems like the Internet of Things, or artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or large imagery processing, things that would require a very agile scalability and elasticity approach there. Maybe you need an offsite backup. And this is where some organizations start off their cloud adoption just by using the cloud as an offsite backup. Maybe your IT is reluctant to change. And I know maybe that's a hard word to use, but maybe they're just so busy handling the day-to-day activities and their workflows that they just can't stay up to date with your systems, the GIS department's hardware and software and licensing, those kinds of things. Maybe you need access to modern hardware, right, or those scalable systems and network that the cloud provides us through that scalability and performance metric. Maybe you only want to pay for what you use, right? That's a big benefit and cost advantage is leveraging that pay as you go and pay for what you use when you use it model. Maybe your organization has been breached, and this is always a big topic to talk about when we get to security. Is maybe you've had incidences where your on-premise data center or your organization or your facility has been hacked or breached or compromised in some fashion. So I want to focus on that just for a second. I want to focus on cloud security. And I want to kind of highlight 4 features that demonstrate why the fear of the cloud is more of a myth than reality. The first one is strong perimeters and surveillance. So these organizations, the cloud providers, have to provide precautions to secure their facilities, whether it's through high fences or barbed wire fences or concrete barriers or having guards patrol the area, security cameras 24/7, very secure environments there. Controlled access, not only the employees, but vendors and visitors, all are physically separated from any one company's mission critical data, and controlling who has access and when they have access to that. And also not only having access to the best data centers, but also to highly skilled IT professionals that are trained in cybersecurity and have that expertise on premise and within their staff to constantly maintain and look at these threats. And these cloud providers undergo regular audits to protect against any kind of flaws in their security systems. And they go through these frequent auditing practices because they have to, right? That's their business, that's their line of work, and they have to maintain that level of security and confidence that when we use the cloud, we can be assured that our environment is secure. Now, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've seen data centers just like this picture here. I've been in one data center where the door was literally propped open by a fan to keep it cool. And I heard one story where the data center was on the first floor, and above it was a bathroom, and the pipes broke, and the water started leaking and dripping down on top of the servers. Again, from a data center perspective, these cloud providers, that's what they do, that's what their life is, and they provide state-of-the-art facilities. They also provide cloud security offerings. These offerings that are put in place to help enable organizations to focus on their missions instead of, and in conjunction, minimizing the distractions of having to build and maintain these in-house IT data centers and solutions. And the ones I'm going to highlight here are from Amazon and Microsoft. Microsoft has one called Azure Government or Government DoD, and Amazon has one called GovCloud. And they provide these sort of bundles, these offerings that include either FedRAMP certifications or FISMA compliant or HIPAA compliant environments where you can just grab hold of that area and start to deploy your solutions within there. So don't um, don't be afraid of using the cloud because of security concerns and or the myth that it's just not secure. The next area I want to talk to is looking at things that you can do to prepare and some of the steps that you can take on getting started. And one of those is evaluate. What are you trying to achieve? Really look at your ArcGIS infrastructure, how you have it deployed on premise, and what you want to do and what you want to try and achieve. What are your goals? What are you trying to get out of this migration to the cloud? And then document that process. Now, I say here can't get enough. We don't need to have a 100-page need assessment, right? That'll just get put on the shelf and no one will use it. But you want to make sure you document enough so that you can help others understand the process and what you're about to do, because this is going to be a big paradigm shift for some folks by moving this infrastructure to the cloud. So evaluate, document, talk to the experts, architect out the right solution to fit your goals, which you've done in the evaluation process. And then along this process, these steps, you make sure you educate and share the dream with all the organizations and those people that will be affected by this process. Use best practices and patterns when doing the deployment. And then choose the right migration path or method. You can see here some of these, the buzzwords out here like rehost, refactor, re-architect, and rebuild. But I think this last one is the most important, because I think this is where most folks get in trouble, is because they don't really understand the nuances and or the complexities of migrating not only just the infrastructure but the content. And so we want to look at this real closely. I want to give you some ideas here and some examples or suggestions when you start to move the content, because again, this is the biggest risk area. So first off, what are you migrating? How complex is your deployment environment? Do you have a production? Do you have a stage, test, and development environment? What is it going to take to migrate all those? Do I need all those migrated? What's my authentication model? Do I use built-in? Do I use Active Directory or federated services? Or I use some kind of SAML authentication process? Databases. How many databases do I use within my GIS infrastructure now? The format. Can I just back up and restore them? Can I do a replication? How am I going to get and move my information, my data, up to the cloud? Are there any automations or scripts, right? Those data processing automations. What's in place now that I do on a regular basis to engineer my data or to clean up my information before I push it out? What about all my projects, right? Where does ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro sit? Where are my desktop editors? Where do they go if I move to the cloud? Do I keep them on premise or do I move them to the cloud as well? And what about all those services, the hosted feature services, the map services, and GeoVent and image services, and whatever thing else you've got hosted and published within your enterprise GIS? What about republishing those and rebuilding those? And along those lines, then go your web maps and your web applications, making sure all that gets migrated up to the cloud as well. And another area I want to make sure you think about here is what other business systems might break if you move the GIS. Do you have a work order management system in place like CityWorks? Do you have other third-party business systems that would be affected if you were to move? Here's an example of a typical cloud deployment for a small to medium-sized organization using the base components of ArcGIS Enterprise. So we have our web adapter, we have our remote desktop gateway sitting in our public subnet, we have our portal and ArcGIS server and data store sitting in our private subnet, all within a virtual private cloud, all within a availability zone inside of a region. And I'm using Amazon Web Services as an example here, but this is a typical example that we use to help folks migrate to the cloud. And what's interesting is that within your base ArcGIS Enterprise deployment licenses, you have the ability to set up an active production and a passive production that you can use as a disaster recovery model or a failover in case the active production goes down. And you can have those other systems just turned off and standing by and only use when needed, which goes back to that cost benefit, right? Pay for what you use when you use it and only when you use it. And this is a great example of doing that. Now, I talked about desktop, or I briefed over that briefly in the previous slide there, but I want to focus in on that just a second here. So where does my desktop go, and how do I move my editors from on-prem to the cloud? There's several options here. Most cloud providers provides a virtual environment, right? Creating a virtual machine and then installing ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro on that environment. Some have virtual workspaces. Amazon Web Services provides a workspace service, and they also provide this app stream service, sort of like a Citrix type of environment where you can have a thin client like a web browser or a thin desktop client, and you can still access ArcGIS Pro within that client. You can see here in this animation, this is ArcGIS Pro running inside of a web browser using Amazon's AppStream technology. So you remote access through a thin client to use your desktop. And you can build out these environments to spec whatever you might need. You may need to do some 3D processing or image analysis, or you might want to use Pro or ArcMap, or you might need to be building caching or tiles services. Again, that's the benefit of the cloud. You can stand up and scale the environments to fit your need for that day's activity, and then spin it down when you don't use it, and then don't pay for it. So provision and use what you need on demand. Another area I want to kind of share is monitoring. Now, most cloud providers already have built-in monitoring capabilities for monitoring things like your CPU and RAM and storage and bandwidth and hard disk reads and writes and things like that, and you'll leverage some of those. But you want to also extend that and monitor the services. We kind of work through three evolutions here. So one, we will take advantage of the cloud provided monitoring capabilities, but we also at gisync have written some really lightweight Python scripts to help us monitor certain aspects of the system. We also know that Esri has the ArcGIS monitor out there, and if you have access to that, this could be a really nice tool for you to use to help monitor your entire ArcGIS infrastructure, the servers, the systems, the data, the connections, and things like that. We've also leveraged a third-party tool called PRTG, which allows us to create additional insights into the systems that we're using to provide access to our enterprise GIS. So whatever you use, make sure you do provide some level of monitoring of not just the platform, right, the physical aspects of it, but also the services that ArcGIS Server are responsible for. So you can make sure that your site stays healthy and stays active so that the applications and the web maps are up and running. Here you can go down to gisync.com/blog and read more about this. A blog was written on different cloud monitoring options that you can use within the ArcGIS platform. So let me summarize this real quick. First off, don't fear the cloud. There's extremely great benefits in using the cloud, from the capabilities, moving away from traditional data center capabilities and leveraging what the cloud services and those cloud providers offer us, to performance, right? That scalability and elasticity, to the cost, paying for what you use when you use it. And then that additional security, all rolled into these cloud provider offerings. We've been seeing a great intake and adoption rate in that. Most folks find some way to adopt it. Maybe you start off with a hybrid approach, leveraging some cloud offerings for certain aspects of your enterprise GIS. But the cloud itself and those providers out there provide great benefits, services, and offerings that you can leverage today. And I want to give you an additional resource. I did a deep dive, about an hour webinar in looking at strategies for cloud migrations and managed services. Take a look at this. You'll get some more information there. We go a little bit deeper into the nuances of moving over, some readiness assessment, and some examples of costs for moving to the cloud. So I want to thank you so much for taking time for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, please reach out, steve.mulberry@gisync.com, or just go to our webpage, gisync.com. And thank you, and have a great day.